Okay, so today we're tackling
Rethinking the Sales Force.
Rethinking the Sales Force, yeah, by Neil Rackham and team.
Yeah.
You've provided me with a stack of audio excerpts
Yeah.
from the book.
Right.
So you must want like the deep insights on,
The nuggets.
the nuggets.
Yeah.
How is sales changing?
Yeah.
What's important going forward?
What do we need to know?
Yeah, what should we be paying attention to?
Absolutely.
So I think
we can deliver
I think we can deliver on that.
that. Let's dive right in.
Yeah, the authors make a really interesting point right off the bat that the old way of selling is dying, like just pushing products and talking about features.
Right.
It's on its way out. But the transcript didn't really get into the why of that change, which I think is really important.
Yeah, just saying it's dead is not very helpful.
Right.
And so what's really going on? Why is that old school approach failing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it boils down to a couple of key shifts.
Yeah.
Buyers are way more informed these days,
Mm.
right? They can research online, compare options.
Mm-hmm.
They often know as much as the salesperson does.
Right.
And the problems that businesses are facing are just getting more complex.
Yeah.
So a one-size-fits-all product rarely cuts it anymore.
So it's not enough to just show up with a pitch and a smile these days.
No.
You need to kind of bring more to the table.
Yeah, you really need to understand the customer's specific challenges, maybe even challenges that they haven't articulated themselves.
Right.
And then craft a solution that truly adds value.
Okay.
And this is where those diagnostic tools that the book mentions come in.
Yeah, the original transcript kind of name-dropped those.
Right.
Without really explaining. And I have to admit, I'm curious.
Yeah.
What are these tools
Yeah.
and how do they work?
So think of them as ways to uncover those hidden needs and opportunities.
Okay.
It could be as simple as a really well-designed questionnaire to analyze a client's workflow, and pinpoint the inefficiencies.
Or imagine a manufacturing company that uses data analysis tools to identify areas where a client could reduce waste and improve their production process.
So you're going deeper than just those surface-level conversations.
Exactly.
You're actually getting down into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, getting into the weeds of their business.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us to the 3 types of sales that the authors outline.
Yeah.
Transactional, consultative, and enterprise.
The original transcript kind of skimmed over these.
It did.
And I think it's actually really critical to understand the nuances between them.
For sure.
Because I think, comparing transactional sales to buying gas feels a little simplistic.
Yeah, I agree with you.
I think our listeners are a little savvier than that.
Yeah. Let's give them a little bit more credit.
Yeah.
So think of transactional sales as those where efficiency and speed are key.
Okay.
The product is standardized.
Mm.
The price is often the main driver.
Right.
And the buyer doesn't need a lot of hand-holding. Ordering office supplies online is a good example.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah.
So where does consultative selling fit in?
So consultative is where you need to roll up your sleeves and really become a partner to the client.
Right.
It's about understanding their unique challenges, tailoring solutions, and building that long-term relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Think about a financial advisor crafting a personalized investment strategy.
Yeah.
That level of customization and trust is key in consultative selling.
Okay, and then there's enterprise sales, the big leagues.
Right, the big leagues.
Yeah.
So imagine a tech company partnering with a major bank to completely overhaul their digital banking platform.
That's huge.
Huge undertaking, right? Requires deep collaboration, shared risk and reward.
Yeah.
And a long-term vision for value creation.
That's intense.
Yeah, that's the essence of enterprise sales.
Okay, so the original transcript went pretty heavy on sales force structures, which I think is definitely important.
Yeah.
But I don't want us to lose sight of the customer in all of this. What is like the main takeaway for someone who wants to thrive in this new sales landscape?
I think it boils down to this. Understand your customers, their specific needs, and the type of value they're seeking.
Okay.
And then align everything, your sales, approach your skills, even your company culture, to deliver that value consistently.
That makes a lot of sense, but how do you actually put that into practice?
Yeah.
Let's start with aligning your sales force structure.
Yeah, so the book makes it clear the wrong structure can sabotage even the best strategy.
Okay.
Like if you're trying to handle complex consultative sales with a geographically organized sales force where each rep is a jack of all trades, you're likely to hit a wall.
Okay, so how do you structure a sales force for success in this new world?
Yeah, so it depends on the type of sales you're making, right? For transactional sales, where efficiency is paramount, a geographically based structure often works well.
Okay.
You can maximize coverage and keep costs down.
Makes sense. But for consultative sales, you need a different approach.
You're right. For consultative sales, you might structure your team around specific industries or product lines, ensuring that each salesperson has deep expertise.
Okay.
The book suggests that a dual business system can be really effective for companies serving both transactional and consultative customers.
So you wouldn't expect the same salesperson to be equally adept at closing a quick online sale and then also building a long-term relationship with a complex enterprise client.
It's about specialization and playing to your strengths.
Right.
And it highlights another really crucial point. You can't just throw bodies at the problem.
Okay.
Building the right capabilities within your sales force is critical.
All right, let's talk about those capabilities. What skills do you need to win in this evolving sales landscape?
Yeah, so for transactional sales, it's about efficiency and speed. Think user-friendly information systems, empowering customers with online tracking tools.
Okay.
Maybe even utilizing non-traditional salespeople like part-timers for certain roles.
Right.
And then for consultative sales, it's a different ballgame.
It is a different ballgame.
Totally different.
Yeah.
Those salespeople need to be problem solvers, industry experts, and masters of customization.
Okay.
They need deep product knowledge and the ability to coach clients towards the best solution.
I'm seeing a pattern here.
What's that?
It's not just about selling anymore. It's about becoming a valuable resource to the customer.
You're spot on, and I think that shift in mindset is at the heart of successful selling today.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a good place to pause for now, I think.
Yeah, sounds good.
We'll pick this back up next time.
Okay, I'm ready when you are.
Awesome. Sounds great. Okay, so we've been digging deep into this changing world of sales.
Yes.
Exploring those three main types, transactional, consultative, and enterprise. And it seems like skills matter now more than ever.
Absolutely.
But let's face it, we haven't even touched the topic that's probably top of mind for anyone in sales.
Compensation.
Compensation. Yeah. It's the big one.
Yeah, it can be a real motivator, but it can also be a huge source of frustration if it's not aligned with your goals.
Right.
The original transcript kind of jumped around a bit here.
It did.
But the book really emphasizes that your compensation plan should reflect the type of selling you're doing.
Okay.
It's not one size fits all.
So let's break that down a little bit.
Okay.
What should compensation look like for each of those sales types?
Yeah.
Let's start with transactional.
Okay, so for transactional sales where speed and efficiency are king, those traditional metrics like sales volume and profitability per account can still be useful.
Okay.
You want to encourage your team to close deals quickly and keep costs low.
That seems pretty straightforward, but what are some pitfalls to avoid there?
Yeah, I mean, the danger is that you overemphasize volume to the point where salespeople are making bad deals just to hit their numbers.
Right. You don't want to incentivize behavior that erodes margins or hurts customer relationships.
You got it.
Okay, so drive sales but protect profitability. Got it. Now, what about compensation for consultative sales? This is where things get more complex, right?
It does get a bit more complex because remember, consultative selling is all about building relationships, understanding unique needs, and tailoring solutions.
Okay.
So that requires a different kind of measurement.
Okay. The original transcript mentioned things like needs assessment and solution development.
Yeah.
But didn't really unpack how to measure those things.
Right.
What are some concrete examples?
Yeah. Okay. So let's say you're selling software solutions.
Okay.
You could track how effectively your salespeople are identifying a client's pain points.
Okay.
Are they just scratching the surface, or are they really digging deep into the client's workflow and processes?
Right. So it's not just about closing the deal.
Exactly.
It's about demonstrating that consultative approach throughout the process. That's a subtle but really important shift.
It is. And you might also consider incorporating team-based incentives for consultative sales.
Okay.
Recognizing that those complex solutions often require collaboration.
Right. You don't want to create like a cutthroat environment where salespeople are hoarding information and competing against each other.
You want them to work together.
You want them to work together to solve these big, hairy customer problems.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about the elephant in the room.
Okay.
Enterprise sales.
Enterprise.
How do you even begin to structure compensation for these massive long-term deals?
That's where things get really interesting. Because remember, enterprise sales are all about strategic partnerships and shared success. Short-term thinking won't get you very far here.
So forget about those quick commission checks.
Right.
You need to align incentives
Yes.
with the long-term goals of the partnership.
This might involve tying compensation to the achievement of joint milestones,
Okay.
like co-developing new product or successfully launching a major initiative.
Okay.
It could also mean rewarding things like knowledge sharing and cross-functional collaboration,
Yeah.
behaviors that support the overall health of the partnership.
It's almost like you're creating a mini economy
It is.
within those two organizations.
Yeah,
Where success is measured by the value
exactly.
created for both sides.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
And it really underscores the shift from a transactional mindset to a more relational approach.
Okay.
In enterprise sales, it's less about a rigid compensation plan and more about cultivating a culture of shared success.
Where everyone's invested in
Yeah.
each other's long-term well-being and rewards are distributed fairly based on contributions.
Yes, I like it.
Okay, so we've covered vision, structure, capabilities, compensation. What's the missing piece that brings it all together?
I think the book dedicates a whole section to leadership and change management.
Okay.
And for good reason.
Right, because change is hard.
Change is hard.
Especially in sales, where people are used to doing things a certain way.
Right, they're used to their routines.
Yeah.
So what does effective leadership look like
Yeah.
in the context of a sales force transformation?
Right. It's about more than just setting targets and barking orders.
Absolutely.
I imagine it requires a lot of communication.
Yes.
Getting people on board with the vision, helping them see how these changes will ultimately benefit them.
You got it. Effective leaders paint a compelling picture of the future.
Okay.
And they're transparent about both the challenges and the rewards.
Mm-hmm.
They don't just dictate from on high.
Right.
They involve people in the process, seek their input, and empower them to be part of the solution.
So you're creating buy-in and ownership.
Yes.
Rather than just imposing a new set of rules.
Exactly. And good leaders also recognize that change takes time.
Right. It's not a flip the switch kind of thing.
No, it's not. You need to be patient, persistent,
Yeah.
and willing to adapt along the way.
There will be setbacks.
There will be.
Resistance. Maybe even some grumbling.
Oh, for sure.
It's about navigating those rough waters and staying focused on the long-term vision.
Yes.
But what about those folks who just dig in their heels and refuse to budge?
That's a tough one.
How do you handle that?
So that's where the art of leadership really comes in.
Yeah.
First, you try to understand their perspective.
Okay.
What are their fears?
Yeah.
What are they holding on to?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's a valid concern that you haven't considered.
So it's about listening.
Yes.
Empathizing and trying to find common ground.
You've got it. Sometimes just having that conversation,
Right.
acknowledging their concerns can go a long way.
Right.
You might be able to address their fears with more information, training, or support.
Right.
But what if, despite your best efforts,
Yeah.
someone just refuses to adapt?
Yeah, what then?
That's a tough situation, and there's no easy answer.
Right.
Sometimes you have to make difficult decisions to protect the overall health and success of the organization.
I imagine that's never easy, but sometimes necessary.
Yes.
For the greater good.
Yes,
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here.
we have.
But I keep coming back to this idea of value creation being the driving force behind everything.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on that? What does it really mean to create value in sales?
That's a great question, and it's really at the heart of this whole transformation.
Okay.
It's about shifting your mindset from simply selling products or services to solving problems and making your customers' lives better.
Okay, so it's about understanding their needs.
Yes.
Even the ones they might not be aware of.
Even the ones they're not aware of.
And crafting solutions that deliver tangible benefits.
Exactly.
Those benefits could be anything from, increased efficiency, reduced costs, to improved employee morale or a better customer experience.
All of the above.
It's about making a real difference in their world.
It is.
And that value needs to be clear and measurable.
Yes.
And demonstrable. You can't just talk about it. You have to show it.
You have to prove it.
You have to prove it, yeah.
Absolutely. You need to be able to articulate the value you're creating in a way that resonates with your customers, using data, case studies, and testimonials to back up your claims.
It's about building credibility and trust.
Yeah.
And a reputation for delivering on your promises.
Yes.
Okay, so what are some concrete examples of value creation in action?
Yeah.
Let's get specific.
Okay, so imagine a company that sells industrial equipment.
Okay.
Instead of just focusing on selling the machines,
Right.
they can help their customers optimize their production processes,
Okay.
reduce waste, improve energy efficiency.
Okay.
They can even offer training programs to help their customers get the most out of their equipment.
So they're not just a vendor, they're a partner.
Exactly.
In their customer success.
Yes.
Okay.
Or think about a software company that sells customer relationship management systems.
CRM.
Yeah, CRM systems.
Yeah.
Instead of just focusing on the features and functionality of their software.
Right.
They can help their customers develop a comprehensive customer engagement strategy.
Yeah.
Using the CRM system as a tool to achieve their business goals.
So they're not just selling software.
Right.
They're selling expertise and insights.
Exactly. And the more value you create for your customers, the more successful you'll be.
It's a virtuous cycle.
It is.
Okay, I'm starting to see how this all fits together. It's about aligning your vision, your structure, your capabilities, and your compensation around this central idea of value creation.
You got it.
It's a holistic approach to selling.
It is.
That goes far beyond just closing deals.
Absolutely. And it requires a shift in mindset.
Okay.
Not just for salespeople, but for everyone in the organization.
Yeah.
From the CEO to the customer service rep. Everyone needs to be aligned around this goal of creating value for the customer.
It's a cultural transformation as much as anything else.
It is.
But as we've discussed, change can be challenging. What are some pitfalls to avoid when embarking on this kind of Salesforce transformation?
That's a great question. One common mistake is trying to do too much too soon.
Okay.
Change is a process, not an event.
Right.
You need to take it one step at a time.
Yeah.
Starting with small, incremental changes that you can build upon.
So don't try to boil the ocean.
Exactly.
Start with a specific area like refining your sales process or implementing a new training program, and then expand from there.
Exactly. Another common pitfall is failing to communicate effectively.
Right.
You need to keep your team informed about the changes, explain the rationale behind them, and address their concerns.
Because if people don't understand why you're making changes, they're less likely to embrace them.
Exactly. And it's not enough to just communicate once.
Right.
You need to communicate consistently throughout the entire process.
Keep people engaged, motivated, informed every step of the way.
Absolutely. And finally, you need to be patient.
Okay.
Change takes time. It's not going to happen overnight.
There will be setbacks. There will be resistance.
There will be.
Moments of doubt.
For sure.
But if you stay focused on your vision and you keep your team engaged, you can achieve remarkable results.
Well said. And I think that nicely sums up the key takeaways from this deep dive into rethinking the sales force.
Yeah.
It's a challenging but ultimately rewarding journey.
Yeah, I'm feeling inspired.
Good.
Ready to tackle these challenges head on.
Awesome.
But before we wrap up, I think it'd be helpful to look at some real-world examples of companies that have successfully implemented these principles.
I agree.
Case studies always bring things to life.
They do.
Don't you think?
Absolutely. So let's shift gears a bit and explore how these concepts are playing out in the real world.
Okay, so we've covered so much in this deep dive. You know, the changing landscape of sales, the different types of sales, the importance of structure and capabilities and metrics and even compensation. But now I think it's time to see how this all plays out in the real world. You ready for some case studies?
Yeah, I was just thinking that there's nothing like a real-world example to bring these concepts to life.
So let's start with a company that's successfully made that shift from a transactional to a more consultative approach. What comes to mind?
Well, the book talks about this manufacturer of industrial equipment that realized they needed to become more than just a vendor.
Okay.
You know, their customers were facing these increasingly complex challenges.
Right.
And they really needed a partner who could help them solve those problems.
So they needed to move beyond just selling products and become more of a trusted advisor.
Exactly.
That's a pretty significant shift. How did they go about transforming their sales force?
Well, they started by redefining their sales roles. Instead of having salespeople who were just focused on hitting quotas, they created these new roles specifically focused on building relationships, understanding customer needs, and developing customized solutions.
So they essentially turned their salespeople into consultants.
In a way, yes, they invested heavily in training their team on things like consultative selling techniques, problem-solving methodologies, and in-depth industry knowledge.
You can't just expect someone to become a consultant overnight. You need to equip them with the right knowledge and skills.
Exactly, and they didn't stop there. They also redesigned their sales process to be more customer-centric.
Okay.
They shifted away from a product-focused approach and moved towards a process that prioritized uncovering needs, developing solutions, and measuring the value that they were creating for their customers.
That's a really important point. Your process needs to support your overall strategy.
It does.
It can't just be about pushing products.
No, it has to be aligned with your goals.
Yeah.
And to reinforce this new way of selling, they implemented new metrics and compensation plans.
Okay.
So instead of just rewarding sales volume, they started rewarding behaviors that drove customer value.
So they align their incentives with their desired outcomes.
Exactly. And the results speak for themselves.
Okay.
They saw a significant increase in customer satisfaction, good customer retention, and ultimately their profitability soared.
That's a pretty compelling case for making the shift.
It is.
To a more consultative approach, it sounds like it was a win-win.
Yeah.
For both the company and their customers.
Absolutely, it was.
Yeah.
And it highlights how important it is to be adaptable.
Right.
And to truly listen to the evolving needs of your customers. Sometimes what they really need from you goes far beyond the product itself.
Absolutely. Okay, so that's a great example of a company successfully transitioning to a more consultative sales model.
Yes.
But what about enterprise selling? Do you have any examples of companies that have really excelled in that area?
Definitely one that comes to mind is a software company that partnered with a large healthcare provider.
Okay.
To develop a customized electronic medical record system.
Wow, that sounds like a massive undertaking.
It was huge.
I can only imagine the level of complexity involved.
Yeah, it was a huge project.
Yeah.
And it required an incredible amount of collaboration and commitment from both organizations.
So how did they pull it off? What were some of the key ingredients to their success?
Well, for starters, they established a crystal clear vision for the partnership right from the beginning.
Okay.
They agreed on shared goals. They defined roles and responsibilities very clearly.
Right.
And they created a governance structure to oversee the whole project.
It's almost like they created a separate entity, a mini company within those two larger organizations.
That's a great way to think about it. And they handpicked a dedicated team.
Okay.
Made up of individuals from both organizations.
Okay.
Bringing together expertise from sales engineering, product development, and even customer support.
They weren't just throwing bodies at the problem.
Yeah.
They were strategically assembling a team with the specific skills and experience needed to make this partnership a success.
Exactly. And they didn't just assume that everyone would magically work together seamlessly.
Right.
They invested heavily in communication and relationship building. They held regular meetings. They made sure the lines of communication were always open. And they worked tirelessly to build trust and mutual respect.
It makes sense. You can have the best plan in the world, but without trust and open communication, it's all going to fall apart.
You're absolutely right. And on top of that, they implemented a really thorough process for tracking their progress and measuring the value they were creating.
So they could see if they were on track to achieve their goals and make sure that both parties were truly benefiting.
Exactly.
From the partnership, nobody wants to feel like they're getting the short end of the stick.
Right. And the results of this approach were fantastic.
Okay.
They successfully developed and implemented a cutting-edge electronic medical record system.
Wow.
That not only streamlined operations for the healthcare provider, but also significantly improved patient care.
I bet the software company felt pretty good about that outcome, too.
Oh, yeah.
They gained a valuable customer, strengthened their reputation as a trusted partner, and developed a cutting-edge solution they could potentially market to other healthcare providers.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It was a win-win situation all around, and it demonstrates that when you approach enterprise selling with a spirit of true partnership, focusing on shared success, remarkable things can happen.
These case studies are so valuable.
They are.
They bring all of these concepts we've been discussing to life and show that it's not just about theory.
Yeah.
Real companies are achieving tangible results by embracing these new approaches to selling.
I completely agree. And these are just a couple of examples from the book.
Yeah.
There are countless companies out there that are transforming their sales forces and achieving incredible success by being customer-centric, focusing on creating value and being adaptable and innovative.
It really feels like an exciting time to be in sales.
It is.
Despite all the talk of disruption and the death of the salesperson.
It is for those who are willing to embrace the challenge. The opportunities are truly limitless. The key takeaway is that sales is no longer just about pushing products.
Right.
It's about building relationships, solving problems, and becoming a trusted advisor to your customers. That's where the real value lies.
So well said. This deep dive has been incredibly insightful.
Glad to hear.
I'm feeling much more informed and equipped to navigate the complexities of sales in this modern era.
Awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And remember, the journey doesn't end here.
Right.
Stay curious, keep learning, and always be willing to adapt and evolve your approach. The sales landscape will continue to change, and the most successful salespeople will be those who embrace that change and see it as an opportunity for growth.
This has been an incredible conversation.
It has been.
And I know our listeners are going to walk away with a ton of valuable insights. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive.
It's been my pleasure.